Okay, I hope you're all suitably refreshed now, and we'll continue. Item 9 on the agenda, Sheringham PF/22/1928, full planning application, a revised scheme for the erection of 62 retirement dwellings, etc. South of Sheringham House, Creamers Drift.
What was my IT issue again? Together. Right. Okay, so this is application PF 221928, agenda item 9. So the application site is located in the southern part of Sheringham. So let's go through the plans. So the presentation pack that hopefully you've already seen before shows us that the location of the site is the application sites. They're marked in red, just context marked in Sheringham Town Centre. So there's existing dwellings to the south of the site. So this is the red line shows the applicant, broadly the application site, and the blue land is land also owned by the applicant. And you can see here the existing Sheringham House site. So there are existing residential dwellings to the south, east, and north of the site. And I've annotated the site plan in the presentation pack, so you can see the names of the adjacent roads which are referred to in the report. So in particular, I've referenced those on pages 41 and 42 of the report pack. Now, firstly, I would draw the committee's attention to the planning history for the site as detailed on the bottom of page 35 and on to page 36 of your papers. Now, outline permission and subsequent reserve matters for a not entirely dissimilar proposal have been approved. Planning conditions have been discharged and development has commenced. Now, I've set this out in the report on pages 40 and 41 under the principal section. Now, officers are of the opinion that these extant permissions are material planning considerations that should attract significant weight in your decision making today. Now, the extant permissions also include a legal agreement which, amongst other things, provides a financial contribution towards off-site affordable housing, which was circa £55,000, as well as other contributions, again, not dissimilar to what is being proposed as part of this application. And I set out the proposed 106 contributions across pages 45 and 46 of the report. So just picking through the actual proposal itself. So I've attached a site plan showing the approved scheme. So that's reference PO 161725, just so you can see the context of what's been approved compared with what is now being proposed. So it's this property, the red property here on the west of the site, that's the primary change, and Sandpiper's house here, which changes as part of the proposal as well. So this is a sort of zoomed out sort of site plan view, and I've provided a zoomed view showing the main change. So instead of the block of flats, we now have 10 single-story bungalows proposed on the site. This is the main access point into the site here. And this building here, the internal layout has changed in terms of the numbers of flats, and that's set out in the report. So in terms of elevations, so the bungalows, there's two different bungalow types, type A and type B. So just sort of showing what those look like and what their sort of footprints are. Two bed bungalows. And we have some elevations, some CGIs of what the proposed bungalows would look like within that sort of woodland setting and landscape within the site. I've also included an elevation of Sandpiper House. So this is the building that the internal arrangements would change. When you compare this elevation to what's been approved already on the site, it's very, very similar indeed. And in the presentation pack, I've included some cross sections that have been provided by the applicant, just so you can see the relative levels, because it is a sloping site. The land levels do change in the area, so I thought it'd be helpful for members just to see the context. I know it's sometimes hard to see red text and red drawings, but just helpful for context there. Okay, so in terms of the main issues for consideration, excuse me, losing my voice today. So the report before you sets out the officer assessment in terms of principle across pages 40 and 41, the housing mix and type on page 41, the effect on residential amenity I've set out on pages 41 and 42, highway safety is covered on pages 42 and 43, and the effect on trees and landscape at page 44, together with the assessment on affordable housing and development viability across pages 45 and 46. So in relation to these particular issues, officers consider the proposals broadly comply with the policy, but as set out in the report, where the proposal does depart from policy, officers consider that the existence of the implemented permission is a material consideration to which significant weight should be apportioned as a reason to depart from policy. So that just leaves two outstanding matters that are referred to in the report, and I'll start first with ecology. So we've had, since drafting the report, we've had a response from the council's ecology officer raising no objection to the proposal to the proposed development on ecological grounds, and they suggested the inclusion of three conditions. So one relating to lighting design, so that we can make sure light doesn't have an adverse effect on bats, a condition relating to a construction environmental management plan, and to secure the ecological enhancement set out in the applicant's ecological appraisal. So on the basis of the ecology officer response and subject to the imposition of conditions, officers considered that the proposal would accord with the core aims of core strategy policy EN9, which relates to biodiversity and ecology. Now, turning to matters of flood risk, I've sort of set out the position on pages 43 and 44 of the report, and a copy of the Lead Local Flood Authority response was appended to your report papers across pages 49 to 54. Now, since drafting the report, the applicant's drainage engineers have reviewed the Lead Local Flood Authority comments, and on Friday last week provided an updated flood risk assessment and drainage strategy revision P02, and that was dated the 14th of July. It's quite a big document. It's across 7 parts on our website, but that's been submitted, as well as a document called LLFA response. So this is the applicant's drainage engineer responding to those individual points you may have seen in the local flood authority response. So we've reconsulted the Lead Local Flood Authority. Unsurprisingly, we haven't yet received a response, given that we only consulted them on Monday. But as part of the recommendation, obviously we're asking for delegated authority. So in coming to your decision today, you may well be asking, what is the likelihood that the outstanding drainage matters can be resolved? Can we have confidence that if we delegate the matter to the assistant director, that we can resolve this issue? Now, in terms of context, it's certainly worth noting that a drainage scheme for a scheme not dissimilar to this on this site was approved by the Flood Authority as recently as July 2020. So we know a scheme is possible to be resolved on this site. It's just really a matter now of finalising those details between the Flood Authority and the council and the Drainage Authority. So obviously that approved drainage scheme from the implemented permission can be implemented and obviously could be built out. So we have confidence that we can resolve this. So we consider it a reasonable prospect that an acceptable drainage scheme can be achieved. So that does lead to a slightly amended, only very slightly amended recommendation to you. So we're seeking delegated approval to the Assistant Director Planning, subject to satisfactory resolution of the surface water matters, securing the Section 106 obligations to the value of £97,265 for the purposes set out in Section 8 of the report, and the imposition of conditions, including any considered necessary by the Assistant Director. Now, I did say in the report that I would circulate a draft list of conditions, and I apologise, that wasn't possible to do before the committee given some changes, obviously with details from the flood authority awaited. I have put together a sort of a draft list. So if members do have particular questions about sort of conditions that we would be imposing, we would be looking for conditions along similar lines to those that were secured at the outline and reserve matters stage. But in addition, we would be wanting to secure to ensure that Knoll Road, the pedestrian link to Knoll Road, is just a pedestrian link and not used for anything other than that. Because there are a number of residents on Knoll Road have raised concerns about that it could become something other than a pedestrian link. So that's something we want to secure as part of that permission. And the applicant has said that they're happy to have that secured as part of any decision by the committee. And obviously we need to await the response from the flood authority and any conditions that they may want to see imposed as well. So currently I've got a list of about 22, 23 conditions, which reflects what's happened before. Worth noting that an occupancy restriction was secured on the original permission, and again we would secure an occupancy restriction as part of this decision as well. So I'll just read out what the occupancy restriction says so you're clear. It says the occupation of the dwellings hereby permitted shall be restricted at all times to either a person who is at least 55 years of age, or the spouse, partner, civil partner, common law partner, friend, or other relation who occupies the apartment or dwelling with a person who is at least 55 years of age. So that's a fairly typical occupancy restriction. I'm happy to take any questions on conditions, Chair, but that's the recommendation for you to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to speakers. I have no town of parish speaker, no objecting speaker. I have a list of 3 supporting speakers. I understand, Michelle, you're going to speak or read a paper from the agent before you go into your own speak. So you can stay there. You've got a microphone. So yeah, if you'd like to go first. You have 6 minutes in total, 3 and 3.
Chair, is it just worth saying that the agent who was due to speak today has been taken unwell, so that's why the agent speaking on his behalf. That's why there's 6 minutes. Okay.
Our planning consultant has been taken ill, so can't be present today. I'm reading his representation. So for Alan Presley of Cornerstone Planning on behalf of the applicant. Outline permission was granted for the development of this site for retirement dwellings in 2017 and reserve matters approved in 2019. All requisite conditions of the permissions have been met and discharged. Development has lawfully commenced on the scheme, but has not continued because of changes to economic and market conditions. As such, the applicant is, through this application, looking to include some different dwelling types and sizes to those approved. As indicated, the existence of an extant, that is to say, lawfully commenced development, is a material consideration to which significant weight should be applied in considering this alternative scheme. The application seeks only to amend one main part of the approved development, substituting one block of 10 apartments with 10 bungalows. Although the overall variety has also been improved by introducing some 1-bedroom apartments in lieu of the 2 bedrooms. The report acknowledges that these changes represent an improvement over the extant scheme. It's also important to emphasise that this application does not seek any reduction to the Section 106 contributions from the extant permission. The financial contributions are in fact to be increased and a clawback provision added to ensure development is completed in a timely manner. It's also important to note the face of issues raised by the LLFA about drainage. A condition of previous permissions required approval of a detailed surface water drainage scheme, which was submitted and approved in full by the LLFA in July 2020. Nevertheless, we've submitted another detailed scheme to the FRA and updated FRA and responded to the LLFA's subsequent comments. Your officer has recommended a delegated approval on the basis of drainage matters being resolved, that in the circumstances and it's an appropriate and sensible way of proceeding. We hope that the committee will support the report's recommendation accordingly. We're accompanied by the applicant and drainage engineer and are happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Now you want to do your own.
Now for me. Michelle Robinson, Director of Pre-Planning, Canham Consulting, on behalf of the applicant. A drainage strategy has been prepared for the proposed development. The current strategy largely aligns with the previous strategy prepared in 2016 and that discharged and approved in July 2020. The previous strategy involved infiltration for part of the site with attenuation and restricted outfall to the watercourse for the northern area of the site. The current strategy involves infiltration only. It includes permeable paving for treatment that will be under-drained and directed to appropriate areas for infiltration, as well as a shallow infiltration basin, ensuring that there's no increased flood risk off-site. There was SI and infiltration tests undertaken in 2009 and further tests in October 2021, which is after the approved scheme. This has shown variable results across the site, with some areas having failed infiltration and others with feasible infiltration. We've therefore located the infiltration in areas where infiltration has been shown to be achievable. We are following the LLFA drainage hierarchy, which is firstly rainwater harvesting, which we've now incorporated with rain butts and planters, then infiltration techniques, which is what is proposed. It has been proposed to do further infiltration testing at precise depth and location of the infiltration, given this LLFA is still raising questions, notwithstanding the previous scheme. The proposed drainage has been designed for the 1 in 100 year event plus 45% climate change in line with standards. We'd prepared a response to the LLFA comments, which removes any deep infiltration, so it's now only shallow, allows for additional storm events, and provides a 1 in 100 year plus 1 in 10 year event storage. Foundations will be designed accordingly to account for the permeable paving near the buildings. There will be appropriate funds put in terms of in details for the permeable paving given the sloping site. We've incorporated reuse and applied appropriate factors of safety in line with the SUDS manual. Groundwater levels, nearby borehole records show it's not shallow and therefore it's not considered to be of concern. In regards to comments that have been made on the proposals on existing surface water risk on Knoll Crescent and Knoll Road and worsening the situation at Woodland Rise, there's currently no surface water flood or minimal surface water flood risk shown on Woodland Rise and some in the local area on the roads. There's no risk to the site itself. We'll be incorporating an infiltration scheme which matches the current strategy, which will not increase risk off the site. We'll manage it within the site. We're not going to the watercourse as previously proposed, so we'll be reducing the amount of water going from the site. In terms of land management, there'll be a maintenance company for the site that is responsible for maintenance of the SUDS features and trees and landscaped areas. Therefore, there'll be appropriate management of landscaped and SUDS areas. As noted, the access to Knoll Road is proposed for pedestrians only.
Okay, stop you there. Thank you. And Mr. Davis.
I'm not speaking.
Ah.
Yeah.
I have down a Richard Davis applicant. Yeah, it's all, so we're covered then. No. Okay, we move to local member, please.
Good morning. As you'll see from the report that I called this in as a result of a number of concerns by residents. And I'm asking really members in their discussions to just be confident that they're happy with the SUDS drainage on the system and that it won't contribute to a worsening of the issues in the Knoll Road area or the Woodland Rise area. I mean, those issues have also been raised by Anglian Water in that report as well. And we also don't want to create a problem, as recognised by the previous speaker, that at the moment there is not flooding issues on Woodland Rise or Woodland Rise West, but we don't want that to be created through this development. The other concerns were about landscape and woodland management. So I think I would like you to be confident that an adequate plan is in place for that. And the pathway is the big concern through onto Knoll Road. So as long as you are confident then the conditions are being met that meet that, then obviously you can base your decisions on that. I will be voting on this because I am not predetermined. I have obviously been involved with a lot of people who have been discussing this issue, but I am more than happy to listen to comments and have been listening carefully to both the applicants, agents' responses and also Officer Lyons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add before I go to members? Right, over to members. That's a toy.
Shall I go first? Thank you. How unusual isn't that? No, one question I think here, I'll trying to catch all the details and things, but I caught the 1 in 145%. So I think that's a reasonable. We need to be beyond that 1 in 100. We know that things are changing rapidly. My question is, we have tree protection orders, which we perhaps could use around some of the site here. Do we have such a thing as a pond protection order? Because I think that they're essential to this and the maintaining of it. I know that they've said they've got a management team to maintain it, but we need to ensure that they don't become silted up, not retain as much, that they actually give the biodiversity. So yeah, I don't know whether we can condition that or is it something we can do. That would make me more comfortable, but I'm also happy to propose, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's such thing as a PPO or pond protection. Whatever it's, obviously, that's essentially part of the management and maintenance of the site. I think that's something that we would secure as part of a planning condition. I mean, the applicants here, so they can answer that question whether that's something that they would be prepared to secure as part of that management and maintenance plan. But it's part of the site, so it would make sense that that's covered as well, because it's important they are managed and maintained.
I just would like it conditioned that they are maintained as they're meant to be and not allowed to degrade over time.
Yeah, just to say on that, there'd normally be a condition for the approval of the maintenance and management scheme for the SUS features. So that would be approved by LPA and LLFA.
Thank you.
Can I just
Sure.
ask, Chair, if there's a service charge going to be levied on each property as part of the maintenance of the common parts on the site? Is that the proposal? Yeah.
20 acres.
Yeah.
There is an annual charge.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to check.
Victoria.
Thank you. Did I hear correctly that the section 106 monies hadn't decreased because the affordable payment seems to be very low for a development of this size? That's one question. Second question, was all that glazing in Sandpiper House really approved? I mean, that's so anti our current thinking about light pollution in the A and B. I can't believe that. But if that's all history, then I'm very sad. But the amenity of these bungalows seems to be very minimal. They're tiny. They're below the recommended size, aren't they? And I'll be happy to pass what strikes me as slightly substandard housing on this site. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of the, sorry, I think I'm missing the first question. So the first question was about the
Section 106,
section, that's
affordable
right.
housing.
I knew there was something else in addition to the glazing. So the 106 money is the applicant has produced a viability report. So they did back when the 2016 application was considered as well. And the viability evidence set out that it wasn't possible to provide on-site affordable housing, but contributions were possible for off-site provision and provision of other contributions as well. So they've resubmitted another viability assessment, and that's come back, which is where the £97,000 figure comes from. So that's what the viability consultant, our viability consultant, has agreed is a reasonable amount based on the evidence that's been put forward. So that's where on in the reports you see a whole list of 106. That's how that's split out. We are, as part of this application, saying to the applicant, build this scheme out in 5 years, otherwise we will ask you to do another viability appraisal. So if the market position changes in 5 years, if this scheme isn't built, we will ask for another viability appraisal, so that if there's more money that's available for affordable housing, then let's have a look at that. Obviously, the market could go the other way and could be in a worse situation, but obviously we've secured that reappraisal, which we don't always have on schemes, because anything less than 5 years, we shouldn't be asking for an uplift. But the applicant has agreed in this case that they will build this out in 5 years, so that's secured. In terms of the glazing, so as I said in the presentation, the glazing and the elevations are similar to what's already been approved. So that ship has sailed in terms of the previous permission. In terms of the garden areas for the site, if I just go back to the sort of zoomed in. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you could argue that those gardens are sort of relatively small. I mean, they're sort of not that dissimilar to the footprint of the building. But yeah, in policy terms, I think we're sort of broadly comfortable with that. There is green space within the site, so it's not as if they're sort of hard up with no green space or amenity space to enjoy that. And we find with lots of sort of properties that are sort of designed for older people, they don't necessarily always want to have big garden areas because that's something to manage and maintain. So it's kind of responding to the applicant's responding to market conditions there. But, so we've recommended that it's approved. We're not raising that as a reason for turning this down. Okay. Go ahead.
I didn't know it was the gardens that were referred to. I thought it was the floor space that was somewhat small. But the other question I have, are GRAMS payments usually part of a section 106? And forgive me if I just don't know, but that seems to be odd. Thank you.
Apologies, my computer has decided to shut itself down. So if you look on page 46 of the report, so there's a table there which sets out all of the contributions, how that splits out. So you'll see that the top line, there is a GRAMS contribution, which is secured on this as part of this application. So that is secured. On the previous application, it was pre-GRAMS and it was a £50 per dwelling contribution. So that contribution has gone up as part of this application. Yep, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see that there's going to be a condition ensuring that the access way onto Knoll Road remains pedestrian. That's good to see. I think there's a typo on page 46 in the first paragraph under other considerations. I think hydraulically unconnected should be hydrologically. Just in case it's escaped anybody's. I don't think there's a funicular between the two sites, as far as I'm aware, when I last went to that part of Sheringham. But to get back to the report, it would have been useful to see those conditions that are settled, listed, and perhaps a footnote saying that other conditions are still sort of being prepared or considered or are outstanding, because we're waiting for the drainage issue to be resolved with the lead flood agency. But the question I've got is why, when we've been dealing with this site since 2017 and again in I think it was 2019 reserved matters, why has it taken to this very late stage for drainage matters to be resolved, particularly when we've got a nearby site, which I think I heard the officer say had a scheme that had been approved. I don't understand why we're in this situation where we're having to delegate at this late stage drainage matters to officers.
I mean, essentially, we're in a situation where we have a different. Well, there's different people at the flood authority. Obviously, officers change. Officers who were there in the past who may sign off the decision may not be there now. So you have different people who interpret legislation in different ways, and those discussions between the applicant and the drainage and the LFA and the drainage engineer, they have different ways of interpreting legislation. Legislation changes. There's new ways of responding to legislation. So it's how the applicant has. So it's about understanding what's changed. How do we respond to those concerns that the flood authority are raising that they perhaps didn't raise back in 2020? So I think it's kind of an evolving process. Obviously, we're at a point now where the latest FRA has been submitted, and hopefully we'll be at a point where we can confidently get that resolved to move forward. But yeah, it's like anything. It's things come back, consultees come back with points, and we have to try and respond to that. I mean, the alternative is to ignore the consultees, which I don't think members would want us to do. We need to sort of, particularly on an important issue like surface water drainage. So
I was just wondering. So thank you for that clarification, and I'd like to thank the applicant as well for engaging with us and offering an uplift. If it takes longer than 5 years to build out, I think that's encouraging. I think that is to be applauded.
Are you proposing, as a recommendation?
I can propose,
Thank you.
Chair, thank you.
I'm sorry, I got John, to you seconding. Yeah,
Sorry, second, yeah.
my apologies. It's getting to be a long morning. Anybody else wishes to speak on this one? In which case we have a proposer, Toy, second, councillor Brown, we'll go to the vote, which is to delegate approval to the Assistant Director of Planning, subject to the list there with the long draft list of conditions that Jeff has prepared.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll call out your names in alphabetical order and just indicate if you are for, against, or abstaining for the proposal as set out by the Chairman. Starting with councillor Beattie,
For.
councillor Brown,
For.
councillor Fisher,
For.
councillor Fitch-Tillett,
For.
councillor Heinrich,
For.
councillor Holiday, councillor MacDonald,
For.
councillor Netherway, councillor J Toy,
For.
councillor K Toy, 4, councillor Vickers, 4, and councillor Withington, 4. So that is unanimous.
Thank you. We've agreed to delegate approval to the Assistant Director. So it's up to you to negotiate all the fine detail now. Thank you. Right, we'll move on again. Yeah, just have a quick changeover of legal officers. It's hot seating today. Right, who's doing this one? Chris and. I'm gonna go and find him first. Yeah, just that's a short delay while we wait for the presenting officer to get up here. I'd rather officers are busy working rather than sitting here waiting and use of their time. All right, colleagues. Then as the tech is working, we'll move to agenda item 10, North Walsham PF/23/1029 relates to a veranda to the rear of a dwelling, extension of a first floor balcony, Leader House, Cromer Road, North Walsham. Chris, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just move on to the first slide because. I'd like as an opener to just with the cursor, which I think you can see on screen, point out where we had a letter of objection from number 23A. We have this very strange arrangement of address here, where 23, which is presumably the original property on this plot to the west of the application site, is set at the back, 23B set in front, and 23A there. Now, of course, when one's putting balconies onto properties, one of the principal concerns that one has always is amenity for others, and therefore that's why I've majored on just showing you the relationship of who is where. Moving on, this is the frontage off Cromer Road, showing the Cedar House itself, which has been remarked upon by the ward councillor as being a pretty remarkable property. It's not actually in a conservation area or designated in any way officially, but could be considered to be an undesignated heritage asset. By virtue, it's somewhat unique form of construction for the area with a lot of cedar cladding. Then moving round to the side in Morrison Close, you can see that there's a fairly substantial tree in the garden, and that features a little later. And looking down the side between properties, you'll see that there's a fairly substantial outbuilding on that boundary. So moving on, 23B, the property at the front to the west, does have a pretty poor relationship with regard to privacy of its grounds around it. You can see that the little red line that I've added on here gives you the approximate size of the balcony. I can't say any more than it's a photo montage and therefore don't hold me to absolute precision, but you'll see the sort of effect that you're getting and the screening effect that's provided by the existing flat roofed extension. And then moving around, you can see that the relationship between that area outside 23B and the property 23 at the back is very poor. It's very heavily overlooked. So I would argue that the amenity harm of the proposed balcony extension is somewhat reduced by the fact that this area is already heavily overlooked. This, by the way, is not the property that made objection. 23A made objection. They are 30 metres away. If members feel that harm does not occur to 23B, I think they won't. You wouldn't feel that harm was occurring in any way, shape, or form to 23A. Moving on, this is the existing property. The point being, there is a balcony, but it's an inset balcony at first floor level. The proposal has a projecting balcony over a veranda. The veranda itself would be within permitted development extents. So it is just the balcony that requires planning permission. And here we have a illustration of the building with the projecting balcony added and the veranda. My contention is that in aesthetic terms, the new balcony and veranda are very much in keeping with the somewhat colonial flavour of the existing premises. Side view and a tree protection plan illustrating root spread and where fences are to go to try to ensure that the construction of the veranda doesn't cause harm. Having said that, of course, the veranda could be constructed under permitted rights. One property I haven't mentioned with regard to amenity is the one to the rear. And I'll go back to this slide here, so I know for completeness, to number 4 Morrison Close. As you will see, it has a small, very small window in the flank wall, which I suspect serves a toilet or some other such thing. Now, you'll see that it is currently facing directly onto where the inset balcony is, and obviously it will then face a balcony that will be some 3 metres deeper towards it. Again, I think because of the presence of the existing balcony and the nature and form of that property, amenity is not harmed. The balcony is big enough for a family group to get onto, to celebrate, but too small, I would suggest, for larger parties that might give rise to unusual levels of noise that might go above what is normally expected in a residential area. So I think I've covered off the issues that we were discussing. I see highways I mentioned highways there, parking. I think that's because at the time when I was looking at to see whether there's any alterations to the driveway and parking arrangements. There isn't. They're completely unaffected by this. So in conclusion, I consider in recommendation that this is acceptable, and we recommend timing in accordance with approved plans and tree protection conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have no town of Paris speaker, no objecting speaker, no supporting speaker. The local member who called it in is Councillor Sims, and he's unable to be with us because of work commitments, but he has sent a statement in which Jeff will read.
Okay, so it's from Councillor Richard Sims. It says Cedar House is a very old and unique building made of Canadian wood. Having known the previous owner who had a detailed photographic history of the building, it surprises me it is not under protected listing. Cedar House is a back to front building with the rear facing Cromer Road, and the front overlooks the neighbouring properties of Morrison Close. Due to this configuration, I believe that while the ground floor extension poses no interference to the neighbours, the extension of the existing balcony would be a loss of privacy to neighbouring properties. With the opposition already recorded by the neighbours, in my mind, only a site visit would show the committee what a beautiful and potentially important building this is to our town. So that's Councillor Richard Sims. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Anybody wish to speak on it? Andrew, are you, is he staring at the screen? You wish to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we've heard from the officer that the design is consistent with the permitted development veranda, if I can refer to it as that. The privacy issue is somewhat diluted given the distance and the nature of the property, the use of the layout of the properties that back onto this property. I can't see anything in the report that would suggest that we should do other than approve this.
So you're proposing.
So I would propose approval, Chair.
Yes.
Likewise, I can't see a particular problem with it, and I do rather like the design that fits in very nicely, which is already there. So I'm more than happy to second approval.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on this one? In which case we go to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So this, if you could indicate your vote either for, against or abstaining for the recommendation, which is for approval. So Councillor Beattie.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Holiday. Yes. Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Netherway. Councillor J Toy.
For.
Councillor K Toy.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
For.
And Councillor Withington.
For.
That's 11 in favour and 1 against.
The application is approved. Let's move to item 12 in the Western PF/23-0153 ground mounted solar PV at Church Farm. Chair. So. Well,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I should have piped up earlier. I have no financial interest in this, but I'm a parish councillor in Hindle Weston, and the parish council has taken a view on this. So I won't speak and I will abstain.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
When you're ready.
Yep, good afternoon, members. Yep, so the proposals for the installation of a ground mounted solar PV system at Church Farm at Hindle Veston. This supports the committee for determination of the site areas over half a hectare, which is a threshold for the council scheme under this council scheme of delegation. Yeah, so this is the site application plan and the aerial plan with the church farm buildings in the southwest corner, and the proposed solar array to go north of the ponds and northeast of the existing agricultural buildings on site. So this is the site plan. So the yellow indicates the 2 double rows where the panels will be sited, and it also shows the cable run which will connect to an existing UK Power Network kiosk located in the field. So this is the an example of, say, the double row panels, and this also shows a ground mounted supporting structure as well. Altogether, there'll be 124 panels with the scheme. So these are some site photos. This is from Formston Road facing eastwards and south. So it's not in the adjacent field. It's sort of a field separates this to the application site. So you can see there's existing hedgerows separating it from public view. This is looking northwards, so you can sort of see the UK Power Network kiosk in the north of the field where the cable will connect to, and you can see the location of the panels in relation to the existing buildings and the pond. So the panels will be sited to the right of the track with the church farm buildings in the background. Again, you see the hedgerows clearly sort of screening the site from wider landscape views. And this is another view from the site looking southwards and eastwards. And this is a view of the pond to the south and the distance and separation from the site. So the main issues, principle, the MPBF and local plan support renewable developments. The impact of the landscape is modest, as it's located in a discrete location, largely screened by hedgerows and trees from the surrounding landscape. Be negligible impact on biodiversity with enhancements from the wildflower grassland planting, and it's not in close proximity to any neighbouring residential amenity. So the recommendation is approved subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you. Have no town or parish, no objection to supporting speakers. I believe the local member is here. I can't remember which ward this in. I think it's Councillor Hankins. Yes, it's Councillor Hankins, who is unwell, so he can't be with us. Members. Angie.
Yeah, I've had a look at this. I've looked at all the recommendation together with all the various conditions. I think officers have done a really good job of research here and covered everything we need. I think it's excellent that they are able to produce solar power. I'm a fan of it myself, and perhaps I should declare interest on that. But no, I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation to approve.
So you're proposing. Thank you. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, like Councillor Fitch-Tillett, I think it's good. You know, we need to produce energy like this. I see this sort of in my mitigation because we had who was it? It was CPRE was saying about the loss of land, but we're putting in wildflower meadows. Actually, not that I want it conditioning, but I would just, if we could pass the comment back to the applicant that maintaining the pond, which was an old slurry pit, as it's mentioned, because ponds are actually really essential to that biodiversity. So if he could put some effort into doing that, that would be appreciated. But that's just a request, not a condition. But otherwise, no, I'm happy to second as well. Thank you.
Peter.
Councillor Toy's just said exactly the thing that I was going to say. So I'm happy with this.
Andrew.
Chair, just briefly, yeah, we're getting a flurry of these applications, and perhaps we as we've said on previous committee meetings, that we need to review the metrics and perhaps, you know, increase the allowance, as it were, if I can put it in those terms for this. Not sure. I think there needs to be a discussion offline as to how we achieve that moving forward. I mean, you know, we have a draft local plan. Don't know whether it needs tweaking in that respect, whether it's an SPD or whether it's just a recommendation on some sort of protocol or validation. I don't know, but obviously that discussion needs to take place, and I would be very happy to have that as the portfolio holder.
Thank you. Clearly, we shouldn't be able to leave much of this to officers rather than spending committee time on it. These are so important. Yeah, go.
Just briefly, it's the local member protocol that we'll need to review on that. So yeah, we'll have those discussions.
Anybody else wish to speak? No, in which case we go to the vote, which is for approval, subject to the conditions.
Thank you. So I will call out your names in alphabetical order. So councillor Beatty,
4.
councillor Brown,
4.
councillor Fisher,
4.
councillor Fitch-Tillett,
4,
councillor Heinrich,
4.
councillor Holiday, councillor MacDonald,
4.
councillor Netherway, councillor J Toy,
4.
councillor K Toy,
4.
councillor Vickers, are you voting?
Abstain.
Abstain. And councillor Withington. So that's 11 in favour and 1
Okay,
abstention.
so the recommendation is approved. Are we on the time frame? All the buzzers keep going. Have lunch when we've finished. Yes, okay. Right, as members are aware, Jeff is conflicted on this one because of relationship with the agent. Just waiting for an appropriate senior officer to join us. Yeah. Okay, if we're all ready, we'll take the final substantive application here slowly. PF/23/0929. Retrospective application for retention of a garage with external alterations. And as I understand, the boundary wall is now removed. We'll go straight to the presentation, please, Chris.
Oh, that one. Okay, sorry, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, that in opening, yes, the garden wall that was being suggested in brick is now to be replaced. Moving on to the first slide. I think here what I wanted to highlight with the cursor is the two rakes of buildings that are listed. So this building is regarded as a curtilage listed, and you will see that the relationship of where the buildings are on their site, and indeed where the garage is in relation to the listed buildings and the curtilage listed element. Principle being that if when a listing took place, the buildings were within that group at that time, then they have that overarching listed status. So here's a picture of the garage that has been built on the site, and I think you can see from the very tall gables the listed barns behind, and a drawing of that garage as it currently stands, and then a drawing as initially proposed when first submitted. The reason why I'm showing you this is that this was the drawing that we had at the time of preparation, and indeed writing the committee report. We've had some further drawings since the committee report was published. The proposal here is to put a dual pitch roof on rather than the pyramidal roof. This is considered to be more in keeping with the general shape of the main barns. I've also taken the liberty of doing a little mashup I have submitted to show you the relationship between the form of the existing and the new barn, the new garage at the end of it, and it indeed still showing the brick wall on this mashup when I did it. And here's a view across the gardens of the application site towards, again, the gable end of the listed barn, showing you in the foreground the pyramidal roofed garage. I will move on very quickly to the alterations that we've received, because I think it's important to do so. Since completing the report, we've had a revised proposal which keeps the garage very much in the form that it was, but substitutes, instead of a roller door, a more in-keeping timber door. And another plan that shows that the garage, as the brick wall, is to be omitted and a hedge substituted. The reason why we can take this as an amendment is that obviously it's reducing the scope of the works, because of course a hedge doesn't really have any status in planning terms. It's anyone can grow a hedge or take a hedge down on the garden. So nobody could possibly be offended by that. So we don't need to reconsult anyone. I will just read something that I think may be useful to members. I had an informal comment from Chris Young, the Conservation Officer, received immediately after I got these drawings, and but he's now gone away on holiday, so I can't get a more formal response. But he says, the applicant has reduced the grounds of objection, hence the level of harm is reduced. It is now far more finely balanced as to whether a refusal can be sustained or not. Had the garage blocked principal views of the main listed buildings, it might be a different matter. As it is, however, there's a real risk that refusing the app purely on the strength of the garage being in a peripheral position might not hold up. He's talking here about an appeal. There aren't any obvious public benefits to offset the relatively low level of residual harm. Now, that comment is important because what one has to bear in mind is the way that the National Planning Policy Framework is framed. And paragraph 202 is a supreme piece of guidance insofar as it says any harm, no matter how minor, should be weighed against the public benefits of works affecting a designated asset. Now, that's a very bland sort of statement. So my recommendation is essentially based around the idea that paragraph in the NPPF is quite directive. If members don't believe there is a harm arising, then they would be perfectly able to conclude that my recommendation is the wrong one. If, however, they can detect harm, then unless they can detect public benefit, refusal should stand. So I think I've covered most of the points in the principle in the main issues. I don't think there were no. I mean, for completeness, we debated things like ecology, parking, and highways. They're not really issues because, of course, there is at the moment, or was, should I say, in the approved plans, 2 uncovered parking spaces shown to the east of the workshops. So there's no change there really. And in terms of brands and nutrient neutrality, clearly a garage raises no issues, but for completeness, it got mentioned. So in conclusion, I'm still recommending refusal on the basis that that's how the National Policy Planning Policy Framework directs me, where one has a degree of harm. I have one question, Chairman, I'd like to address for you, and that is, we circulated comments that were received since from the agent representing the applicant. Have members all had them all and read them, and are they satisfied that they've read and understood them, or do they want me to summarise those comments, or are they prepared to wait for the speaker?
So certainly I've received the relevant emails. Did any member not?
I've received them, Chair, but as I suspect every other member has, but it was quite late. It would be helpful if the officer could summarise if he's happy to do so.
You'd like me to summarise? I will do so.
Go ahead, then.
I received 2 letters, one on the 14th of the 7th, which in summary raised some objections to the way that I'd summarised the comments from neighbours in a misleading manner in some cases. And I must confess that I do agree that I did use the word massive in order to try and shorten one person's comment, which if I read that out in full, it says, we believe that a brick wall in this location extends the built form unnecessary and detracts from the overall natural setting and context of the farmyard character, which your conservation officer was keen to maintain under the original planning permission. And obviously that really, the sting is drawn from that by the very fact that the wall has gone. Moving on, officer assessment, garage removed from the scheme for the overall complex of barns following the withdrawal of 2016 was a different place, had a larger footprint and was taller. The current garage being proposed is lower and smaller and of a different design and is located where parking provision for the old workshop has previously been approved. The barns now known as the old workshop are capable of conversion without substantial new build elements. PF 221909 was approved earlier this year. The current application is a householder application for an additional outbuilding. Effect on heritage assets and surrounding landscape. The committee report states the development does not accord with previously approved plans. It's not clear which approved plans are being referred to. The old workshop barn conversion now has planning permission under PF 221909. This current application is a retrospective householder application for an additional outbuilding. The report says a new pyramidal roof garage that was specifically omitted from previous application upon advice of the conservation officer. The garage was removed from the application to allow further discussion with the local planning authority. Under other considerations, nutrient neutrality and JARAMs are irrelevant matters. And then why are refusal reasons not given? And further comments received on the 17th of the 7th in support of the amended plans submitted on the 13th of the 7th. The application is now only for retention of the garage with alterations. The wall has been removed from the application. A native hedge is proposed where the wall is shown that will provide native soft landscaping border to the barns complex in this location as originally envisaged, screening views of the garage from public and highway to the east. So the drive and public highway to the east. The garage is located where parking for the old workshops previously approved. Garage extends the built form of the barn complex marginally further east. It should be noted that drawing 18090/09 revision E approved under application PF 200537, the parking area for the old workshop extended further east than Oaks Barn. The barn is curtilage listed. It was redundant from agricultural use. Residential use in named as the retention and long-term maintenance of the buildings in the public interest. The use relies on a private car. Householders prefer covered parking. Other barn conversions within North Norfolk have included subservient outbuildings as parking for part of the barn conversion. The applicants are happy to discuss the design of the garage to improve its appearance. The applicants understand that the permissive paths on Slowly Estate are not within the vicinity of this barn complex, and that public views of the old workshop and garage are only available from the public highway to the south of the entrance to the site. Public views of the garage are considerably more limited than would have been the case of the 2016 proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no town of parish speaker, no objecting speaker. Dr. Lyon is supporting. Right, come to the front.
Good afternoon, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Michelle Lyon and I'm the agent for the application. The applicant, an occupier of the purchased the dwelling with the garage from the builder that converted the barns originally. It subsequently transpired that the garage did not fully accord with the previously approved plans for the barn conversion, and therefore the applicant has proactively sought to regularise this situation. The design of the garage before you today has sought to respond to the Conservation Officer's comments that have been raised in the past, particularly on the previous application for the old workshop. So whilst the garage currently has a pyramidal roof, this will be altered to a gable roof and the doors will be moved to the south elevation. This results in the proposed altered garage building aligning with the orientation of the neighbouring barn building. The Conservation Officer acknowledges that the alterations to the roof help in terms of simplifying the overall appearance of the garage and bringing it more in line with the main barn. And also, following comments from the neighbour about the roller shutter door, we've amended the plans to show more traditional doors on the garage. The application did originally include a wall to replace a fence that the Conservation Officer wasn't happy with, and the Conservation not happy with the wall or the fence, so the applicants have removed a physical structure there and are now proposing to revert back to the native hedge that had previously been approved on this complex barn conversions. The added advantage of this native hedge that it will also help serve the purpose of softening and screening the garage building and will provide soft landscaping rather than a hard feature at the boundary of the site, which I understand to be a supported approach. So as I think has already been mentioned, the garage is located where the parking for the old workshop has previously been approved. Therefore, whilst the garage does extend the built form slightly further east than the existing barns, particularly we're thinking Oaks Barn to the south, which is the furthest east, it should be noted that on the previously approved plans for the barn conversion complex, they do show a parking area for the old workshop that did extend further east than Oaks Barn. So we aren't encroaching out into areas that were expected to be soft landscaping previously. The garage is, of course, within the previously approved residential curtilage of the old workshop. Having heard the comments of the informal comments of the Conservation Officer this morning, it is noted that the garage doesn't block views of the principal listed buildings, and I do confer with those informal comments that removing the wall and that things are now, I think, more marginal was the word used compared with the previous consultation response. The listed barns no longer meet the requirements of modern agriculture, and therefore the residential use enables their long-term maintenance of the buildings, which is in the public interest. This garage itself provides the storage and tools required to maintain that listed building.
I have to stop you there. Thank you. Okay. Finally, Barnes, this one. What do members think? Who wants to go first? Andrew.
Shall I go, Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, it is finely balanced. I normally go to the nth degree to protect heritage assets, as people know. I do think that the applicants have worked with officers to introduce amendments to make this scheme more workable as a proposal. I'm just wondering if this building didn't exist, you know, would we have unsightly parking instead? And you could sort of argue, as I think has been alluded to by the agent, that that is a public benefit in itself, in terms of the overall attractiveness of this site, and it is clearly a very attractive site. I understand the officer looking at the MPPF and thinking, well, on a strict interpretation that would apply. But on the other hand, I think that the harm is so diminished given the amendments. I'm just wondering what an inspector would do if we refused and it went to appeal. And I've got a feeling we might struggle there. And I know that shouldn't in itself be a justification one way or the other. But I'm tending towards approving and rejecting the recommendation, Chair. At the moment, not quite completely made my mind up, but that's the way I'm going.
Okay, thank you. I would remind members that our initial vote has to be on the recommendation in front of us. Depending on what happens there, we can then go to another vote on a suitably worded recommendation. Who else wishes to speak? Victoria.
I'm just looking at the original C&D comments, which haven't entirely been negated by the subsequent ones, saying that there was harm caused just by the building of garage, whatever the design of the garage, and causing harm to the agrarian setting. And I think I agree with that, actually. I do think it causes harm.
Okay.
Even with the improvements.
Are you proposing the recommendation in front of us? Okay. Anybody else wish to speak at this point? John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's some issues of I know we have to just vote on the application as it is and take people's word, but there are some issues of some trust. It wasn't, it was not allowed in the first place, and they've gone and built something, and now it's coming as a retrospective. Suddenly the walls knocked down, hedges can be removed, as we've been told. I was just reading actually the actual owner, because apparently it's leased land, a comment that was put on there saying how and perhaps it's something that enforcement may look at, but it has replaced our slots in the brickwork with modern windows. So I'm not entirely sure that they are going to do something that is sympathetic. And I know that's not necessarily a reason, but I would have to go with the officer's recommendation. I'm not comfortable, so I'm prepared to second it.
So you'll second that. Wouldn't normally allow it, but Dr. Lyon, would you make comment on? Thank you for the clarification. So members. Okay, I think we have a recommendation for refusal. Proposed by Councillor Holliday, seconded by Councillor Toy. We'll go to a vote and see where that takes us.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'll call your names out alphabetically, and if you could indicate whether you vote for, against, or abstain for refusal. Councillor Beattie.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
Against.
Councillor Holliday. Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Netherway. Councillor J Toy.
4.
Councillor K Toy. 4. Councillor Vickers
Against.
and Councillor Withington.
Against.
And I know that Councillor Pitchton has left the meeting, so. So that's 6 for refusal and 5 against refusal. So it's just.
Thank you. So the application is refused. I expect there to be an appeal, of course. Let's see how that goes. Thank you. If we can move on now to item 14. Development management performance. I think we'll need Jeff back for that. I'm collecting, please. Waste of money. Lose the appeal. Right. Keep it brief, Jeff. Still got one item of urgent to bring back, of course.
Right. Performance. I presume that's the item you want me to talk about?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay, so
Looking good.
the report, oh, I did have a report, but it's gone. And where you paper. My electronic versions has died on me. Yeah, so I've set out the performance report, so setting out the how we're doing in terms of our quality of decision and speed of decisions. So you'll see we've had 4 major decisions in the month of June, 100% within time. We had 85 non-major decisions and 98% within time. So there was just 2 that slipped out of time. So again, we're doing pretty well on that. Our performance is continuing to be well. The 24-month average, the batting average for majors, we are at 100%. So we can't get much higher than that. And the 24-month average for non-majors is 92.15. So the more we keep those weekly 100% figures coming up, the higher that average will get as well. So yeah, doing pretty well on that. The quality of decisions, again, we were doing pretty well on quality of decisions in terms of appeals. You'll see on the next item, there's 3 that have been allowed that will slightly dent that performance for non-majors. And again, we are still getting quite a few applications received each week. So 243 were validated in the month of June. So we're not actually seeing a significant downturn, although the sort of wider economy is being impacted. We're not seeing a slowdown in application numbers. So we're still busy. And happy to take any questions at that point, Chair.
I must I think we're going to get a lot more domestic applications simply because people find it cheaper to extend and move.
Assuming they can find a builder, of course.
Yeah, what is a builder? I've been looking for one for ages. A bit of a rarity. Yeah, the rest 106.
Yep, pleased to report the Chris Malting's Great Ryber, section 106 has completed, so that can come off the list. Hooray. It was a very long process. Thank you. On the other ones, I'm just noting the yard, the street, Susted, that's been signed by one of the parties, just waiting for the other one to sign it. So that's good on that. So things are progressing well. That's all I've got to say on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. In relation to the Chris Malting's decisions, they will be issued after I come out of committee. So we'll have those Malting's decisions issued today. So that's good.
Excellent. You can see that one finished. Okay, so appeals.
Okay, I'm happy to take any particular questions on appeals. I think the main sort of change we've had is if you look on page 93 of the report, we've had 3 appeal decisions. Sadly, all of them have been allowed. The I'll focus on the Ludham decision. So that was in effect, the inspector making a judgment on a dwelling or conversion of a building to a dwelling in the countryside. I think his interpretation or their interpretation of sustainability was perhaps slightly different to our definition of sustainability. I think they were a little bit more permissive in terms of how they were assessing whether a site was sustainable. So you could write it down as a rogue inspector decision. We're certainly not going to be looking to use that as a shining light to approve of a development in the countryside. But yes, that's worth noting. The Sheringham decision, the potting shed and green, I did announce that at the last committee. Again, that's fairly low level. I'm not going to lose too much sleep about losing that particular appeal. And the Holt decision, that was ourselves as a planning authority trying to uphold higher standards of design on a site. Sadly, the inspector didn't agree with our assessment on that and decided to approve cycle storage, which we felt wasn't appropriate. But again, I'm not going to lose significant sleep on that. But the Ludham one is, yeah, not great really.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Andrew.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think members should probably take a photo of this page and keep it on their phones, because this is a real rarity that we lose 3 appeals. I don't think I've ever seen it in the last 4 to 5 years. So it's disappointing in some respects. I can only imagine, having walked around the development a couple of weekends ago at Hempstead Road, that the inspector has never been anywhere near it. If he had been, I don't think he would have allowed the appeal. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask about the Ludham one. Now that they've been given permission to convert it to a single dwelling, do they still fall under nutrient neutrality, given where it is Ludham?
As far as I'm concerned, Ludham, the outfall from the Ludham treatment works falls outside of the nutrient zone, so they wouldn't be impacted by that.
But potentially that could have been a thing that, although it would have been approved by the inspector, they would have then had to, if it was in another location. Given that this has already happened, we hope it won't be a trend, but
if it would have been approved by the inspector and they'd erred in law by not considering habitats regs, that would have been a matter that we could have challenged that decision. Okay. But as far as I'm aware, the site does drain to a site that drains out of the catchment. So
okay, no, that's fine. I was just understanding the process. Yeah. That was all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we close, I had a matter of urgent business raised with me during the coffee break regarding the Haysborough application. Suggestion was that a site visit might be appropriate. I'm not convinced. Site visits are expensive and quite a few of us know the location anyway. But as it was raised with me that this might be appropriate, given we have deferred it, seeking the views of the members, and we'll just need a formal proposal if required. Does anybody wish a site visit? Can't. Not. Okay, so we're happy that we leave it with officers to negotiate and bring it back at the earliest opportunity. Okay, thank you. Declare the meeting closed then at 12:47.